Matt, so we're here in Hawke's Bay, and I'd like to ask you to give us an overview of Hawke's Bay as a region in New Zealand. You know, what makes it different to the other regions, and why was it the first wine region of New Zealand?
Yeah, so we're standing here in the Gimblett Gravels. It's a relatively new part of Hawke's Bay, but the history started in the 1850s here in Hawke's Bay, and the oldest operating winery started in the late 1900s. So there's been a lot of change through the years, but some of the early pioneers, the mission estate was established by French missionaries, so they had that interest in wine when they came to New Zealand. But there was wine production with the early settlers up in the upper North Island, and then people slowly went down to drier, warmer climes and avoided some of the humidity as well.
Excellent. And what is the climate like in Hawke's Bay in general? Because we're quite close to the coast, so yes. Maybe you can explain what Hawke's Bay is.
Yes, yeah.
and what the kind of the climate as a larger picture here is.
Yeah, so Hawke's Bay is a large bay east coast of the North Island, and the Maori legend has it that was Maui's fishhook. So when the Maori legend has it that his waka was the South Island, and he fished up the North Island, and the shape of Hawke's Bay is the fishhook. We about 2 hours drive from the centre of the North Island, and we have large mountains made up of greywacke that are through the central part of the North Island, and 4 main rivers have formed and flowed through from those mountains out towards Hawke's Bay, and they've really shaped the landscape here.
Excellent. So is it all throughout Hawke's Bay, is it all alluvial soils then, river deposits?
A lot of it's been formed by alluvial soils, yeah. So we're quite a flat area. We're 30 kilometres from the ocean, and the way the rivers, as it flattens out here through the plains, during periods of flooding have just moved in different areas. So the main landforms have been formed by the rivers.
Excellent. And we're here in Gimblett Gravels, which is where Craggy decided to invest and make their wines. Why invest here? What was all the buzz about the region in the 90s? And why is it a special kind of terroir as such? Yeah.
So Hawke's Bay, there's been little pockets of vineyards throughout the area, and that's quite an interesting one from a sub-regional point of view. The Gimblett Gravels was an area which, up until 160 years ago, was a river. So it's very only recently been exposed, and for a long time was deemed the poorest farmland in Hawke's Bay. As people understood a little bit more about how vines need to struggle a wee bit in the soils, they realised stony soils are great for viticulture.
So it was the poorest because it was too infertile.
Too infertile, yeah. And most of New Zealand, because of the volcanic influence across the country, is quite fertile soils. They're very young soils, but they are quite fertile for the most part. Here it's very, very stony, and when we talk about soil, there's not actually that much soil to talk about. We've had 3 days of a lot of rain, so this is probably the greenest it looks as we start spring, but yeah, it will dry out very quickly.
Great. And it's all river rocks?
All river rocks, yeah.
And how deep are the soils? Because we've got across the road a quarry.
Yes.
So clearly it's relatively deep, but how profound are the stony soils?
Yeah, so we're not too far away from where the river currently flows now. So this was a very fast moving channel of the river. This piece of land was actually owned by a concrete company before the Peabody family, who founded Craggy Range, before they purchased it. And the concrete company was going to dig into the gravel, because in some areas the gravel is 30 metres deep, and they were going to excavate that gravel and process it for roading, etc. The quarry that is behind us is actually taking river from the river bed. That's not digging down. But this is I believe it's about 30,000 cubic metres of gravel each year comes down with this river system. So to make sure river doesn't shift back across here, the council will manage that to make sure it's being broken down. In our most fertile areas, we may have about 10 to 30 centimetres of silty sands that are overlaying the gravels, and the compaction of the gravels and the lenses just vary, but there's virtually no clay within this area here. As the river fans out, there is a little bit more clay deposits that will coat the bottom of the gravels.
Excellent. And how does that work in terms of water management? What's your rainfall here? Do you need to irrigate? Tell us a bit about how the soil works in combination with the climate.
Yeah, so rainfall, we will have a decent amount of rainfall during the winter, so that will keep the soils fairly wet to start with, or to have a little bit of water for the vines to access their early growth, but then they'll dry out very quickly during the summer. we're very lucky that we have a large aquifer beneath us, so we can tap into that to provide irrigation. And with virtually no water holding capacity in the soil, the drip irrigation is a very careful tool for us. We're just making sure that we just keep the vines alive and get those roots down deep. So in some of the vines here, we don't have any 20-year-old vines yet, but we've got root systems well down below 2 meters.